The Black Armada had been silent for decades, drifting like ghosts in the darkness of space. They rested in the shadow of a dead moon, its cracked surface hiding the massive silhouettes of ships that once shook the galaxy. Their black hulls were cold, their weapon mounts still, and no engine hum broke the silence. It was said that in the last great galactic war, these ships had burned entire enemy fleets in minutes, that their captains had never known defeat. But when the war ended, the ships were put to sleep, locked away as if the galaxy feared their own power. Most who spoke of the Black Armada did so in whispers. Stories were passed around in alien marketplaces, told in smoky bars and over static-filled cum channels. Some said the ships were cursed, that any who commanded them would meet a terrible fate. Others believed they were alive in some way, that they waited for the right moment to rise again. The truth was buried under decades of dust, sealed behind security codes that no one dared to use. That changed the day humanity entered the war. The Galactic Council had fought the Craven Swarm for years, but the tide was turning against them. Entire colonies were falling, planets burned down to molten ash, millions fled deeper into Council territory. Their homes gone, their hope fading. Humanity had only been part of the Council for a short time, and many alien governments saw them as untested and unworthy. But Earth Command believed differently. They believed humans could do what no one else had dared. They could awaken the Black Armada. On the bridge of the USS Ravenfall, Captain Daniel Ward stood at the viewport, staring at the dead moon ahead. Its pale light washed over the steel deck. His face was calm, but his mind was a storm. The orders had come through only an hour earlier. The message had been short: clear the moon, reactivate the Armada, and prepare them for combat. No one explained how dangerous it might be. Daniel didn't need them to. He already knew. Behind him, Commander Olivia Brooks stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the glowing tactical display. "Sir, scans confirm the Armada is still there," she said quietly. "No power readings, no movement. It's like they've been dead for 100 years. Daniel didn't answer right away. He kept his gaze on the moon, its craters sharp against the black void. Finally he spoke, "Then let's wake them." As the Ravenfall closed in, the crew fell silent. Everyone knew the stories. The Black Armada had names that echoed through history: the Nightfall, the Shadow Wing, the Obsidian Spear. They weren't just ships. They were legends, machines that had made enemies surrender at the sight of them. Now they were drifting relics, forgotten by time. The first shadow loomed out from behind the moon. The Nightfall appeared like a giant black blade, its edges sharp even after decades of rest. Its hull bore scars from battles fought long ago, each one a reminder of the blood it had spilled. The Ravenfall scanners pinned rapidly, mapping the colossal warship in silence. "Still no power," Olivia said, her voice low. "It's completely cold." "Sir," Daniel's lips curved into a faint, almost dangerous smile. "Not for long," he replied. Shuttle teams were already suiting up, engineers from Earth, wearing sealed exoframes, prepared to board the dormant ships. Their mission was dangerous. Ancient reactors could be unstable. Weapon systems could misfire, and if the stories were true, there might be more than just technical hazards inside. But none of them hesitated. The first boarding shuttle left the Ravenfall and drifted toward the Nightfall's hangar bay. Its massive doors were shut. Coated in layers of space dust, the shuttle's lights played over the black steel, revealing symbols from a war long past. As the magnetic clamps locked on and the boarding bridge extended, the crew braced for the unknown inside the hangar. The air was thin and stale. The floor was littered with tools frozen in place, crates stacked against walls, and the faint smell of old oil hung in the cold air. One engineer, Evan Cole, swept his helmet light across the deck. "Feels like they just walked away," he muttered. Like the crew could walk back in any second. They moved deeper, their boots echoing in the silence, past control rooms covered in dust and corridors where the lights had long since gone dark. Every step felt heavier, the weight of history pressing down on them. Somewhere deep inside, dormant reactors waited, silent hearts that once beat with the power of 1,000 suns. Daniel's voice crackled over comms. Status? Olivia's voice came through right after, sharp and steady. We're approaching the reactor core. The engineers reached the control station, its panels coated in frost. Evan wiped a gloved hand across the glass, revealing a screen that flickered faintly, as if struggling to remember how to wake. One by one, the ancient startup codes were entered. Systems groaned in protest, metal shifted, bulkheads trembled. And for the first time in decades, a deep hum rolled through the nightfall. The sound was low and powerful, like the growl of some great beast awakening from a long sleep on the bridge of the Ravenfall. Daniel watched as lights began to crawl along the Nightfall's hull, running in thin lines from bow to stern. There you are, he whispered under his breath. And somewhere in the galaxy, whispers would soon spread. The Black Armada was stirring. And the humans had their hands on the controls. The news that humans had come to awaken the Black Armada spread through the Galactic Council faster than light. Across stations, war rooms, and trade ports, alien leaders and military officers argued over the decision. Many did not trust humans. They were newcomers to the stars, bold and unpredictable. Some saw them as reckless, willing to take risks. Others would never dare. Others feared them for the very same reason. In the main council chamber on Astra Prime, Captain Daniel Ward and Commander Olivia Brooks stood before a half-circle of alien admirals. The chamber was vast, lit by beams of white light that shone down on the council table. Each admiral represented a species that had fought for centuries to protect their worlds from invaders. The air was tense, the sound of quiet murmurs echoing under the domed ceiling. A tall, silver-skinned admiral with deep crimson eyes leaned forward, his voice carrying a sharp edge. The Black Armada is too dangerous. You humans do not understand what you are awakening. Those ships have destroyed entire civilizations. His words were followed by the deep growl of another council member, a massive reptilian being covered in bronze scales. I fought beside the Armada in the last war, he said, his voice low. And I watched them turn on their own allies when orders were unclear. The risk is too great. Olivia stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. With respect, admirals, the Craven swarm is closing in on your worlds. Your fleets are spread too thin. Every day, more colonies fall. The Armada is not a risk. It's the only chance you have left. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Some shouted that humanity had no right to take command. Others argued that the Armada's time had passed and that newer, safer ships should be used, but there were also those who spoke in support of the humans. A shorter, insectoid admiral with shimmering wings tapped the table sharply, silencing the others. The humans are right, she said. Our fleets cannot hold the line. The swarm adapts too quickly. If the Armada can still fight, then it must fight under a hand willing to use it. Daniel had remained silent until now. His eyes swept the room slowly before he spoke, his voice steady. We didn't come here to take your ships and fly them into some glorious suicide. We came because you've been fighting a losing war for too long. If you think the Craven will spare humanity when they finish with you, you're wrong. This is our fight too, and we are not afraid to use every weapon we can get. His words carried a weight that quieted even the loudest of their critics. The silence stretched for several moments before the bronze-scaled admiral finally leaned back in his seat, his sharp eyes studying Daniel. You speak boldly, human, he said. Perhaps boldness is what is needed. Still, not all were convinced. One counselor, a pale-skinned humanoid with a voice like ice, leaned forward. And if the Armada turns on you, Captain Ward? What then? Who will protect the rest of us? Daniel met his gaze without blinking. Then I'll be the first to die stopping it. The chamber stayed silent after that. There was no applause, no cheer, but something shifted in the air. The arguments grew less hostile, and the questions turned practical. How many ships could be brought online in time? What resources were needed? How the reactivation would be coordinated? Slowly, the tide of resistance turned toward reluctant agreement. Later in the docking bay of the USS Ravenfall, Olivia walked beside Daniel as crews prepared shuttles and loaded supplies. You know, she said with a faint smile, half of them still think we're insane. Daniel gave a short laugh. That's fine. They'll change their minds when they see what these ships can do. The docking bay buzzed with activity. Engineers in heavy exosuits checked reactor tools. Pilots reviewed flight plans, and mechanics hauled crates of replacement parts. The plan was dangerous. Humans would have to work alongside alien technicians who had once sworn never to set foot on the Armada again. The first mixed crew meeting was tense. Alien engineers eyed the humans carefully. Some refused to speak, others exchanged curt nods. One veteran mechanic, a short human named Alex Monroe, broke the silence by gesturing toward a holographic diagram of the Nightfall. We start with her power grid, he said plainly. Reactors like these don't wake up gentle, so we'll go slow. The alien beside him, a four-armed technician from the Eura system, let out a huff. Slow will get us killed before the swarm arrives. We work fast. Alex just grinned. Fast is fine, as long as you don't blow us up. There were a few chuckles at that, and the tension eased just enough for the crews to start talking like professionals instead of enemies. Olivia watched it happen and felt a small spark of hope. That night, as the Ravenfall orbited the dead moon, Daniel stood alone on the observation deck. The Black Armada lay below in shadow, its massive shapes barely visible against the void. He thought of the council meeting, the doubts in the alien admiral's eyes, the heavy responsibility now resting on his shoulders. He knew there was no turning back. If humanity failed, it wouldn't just be their own worlds that fell. The entire galaxy would crumble under the Craven swarm, and so, whether the council trusted them or not, the humans would bring the Armada back to life, because in the darkness of war, sometimes the most dangerous weapon was the only hope left. First step to waking the Black Armada began with the Nightfall, the largest and most feared ship in the fleet. She had been the flagship during the last Great War. Her name spoken with respect and fear across hundreds of star systems. Now she floated cold and lifeless, her black armor coated in dust from decades of silence. The humans had chosen her because if the Nightfall could be brought back, the rest of the fleet would follow. Shuttles moved like small insects around her vast hull, carrying teams of engineers, technicians, and security officers. The boarding team from the USS Ravenfall entered through a side docking port that had been forced open with cutting lasers. Inside, the air was stale and icy. Lights from the engineers' helmets cut through the darkness, revealing long corridors lined with panels, each one dark and cold to the touch. Commander Olivia Brooks walked at the front, her rifle slung across her chest. She wasn't expecting trouble, but no one knew what might be hiding inside a ship that had been abandoned for half a century. The silence was heavy, every footstep echoed, and the faint creak of the hull reminded them that the Nightfall was still a sleeping giant. Feels like walking into the bones of some great beast, muttered Evan Cole, one of the senior engineers. His voice crackled over the comms. Daniel's voice came back from the Ravenfall, calm and steady. Then let's bring it back to life. The team reached the heart of the ship, the reactor chamber. The doors were enormous, layered with blast shielding. It took 3 engineers working together to override the locks. When the doors finally slid open with a metallic groan, a rush of cold air poured out. Inside, the reactor stood like a black tower, surrounded by silent consoles and tangled conduits. Olivia stepped forward, shining her light up the towering structure. "All right, Cole, it's yours," she said. Evan didn't waste a second. He and his team spread out, connecting portable power units to the ancient systems. The air was filled with the soft hum of diagnostic tools as they checked every circuit, every relay. "This thing's in better shape than I expected," one of the younger engineers said. "Whoever shut her down knew what they were doing." Cole nodded. "Yeah, like they wanted her ready for the day she'd be needed again." Back on the Ravenfall, Daniel stood over the main operations console, watching the feed from Olivia's helmet camera. He could see the black reactor core slowly waking as the humans fed power into its dormant systems. Warning lights flashed, briefly then turned green, and a deep thrum of machinery began to roll through the Nightfall's decks. The sound was unlike anything the younger crew had heard before. It was deep, almost alive. The floor vibrated under their boots as ancient engines groaned back to life. Somewhere deep in the ship, massive fuel pumps began moving, cycling liquid plasma into the reactor's heart. "Core is warming," Cole reported. "Power at 5% and rising steadily. No instability yet." Olivia allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "Keep it that way." As the hours passed, more of the ship came alive. Emergency lights glowed dim red along the corridors, flickering at first, then holding steady. Environmental systems began to cycle stale air and draw in fresh gravity. Plating hummed back into operation, making footsteps feel heavier and more real. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for: reactor power hit full capacity. The Nightfall's main systems roared to life, and across her vast hull, lines of pale blue lights began to shine, running along the edges like veins carrying energy to every corner. On the Ravenfall, the crew erupted in cheers. Daniel didn't join in. His eyes were fixed on the ship outside the viewport. The Nightfall looked like a predator stirring after a long sleep, and he could feel the weight of what this meant. This was only the first, and already the galaxy would take notice. Inside the Nightfall, Olivia led her team to the bridge. The doors hissed open, revealing a vast command deck lined with control stations. Dust drifted through the air like faint mist. The captain's chair sat at the center, untouched for decades. She stepped forward and ran a hand along its armrest. "Not bad for 50 years of silence," she murmured. Cole powered up the main display, and the bridge filled with a panoramic view of the dead moon outside. Slowly, the Nightfall systems synced with the Ravenfall, ready to receive orders. Daniel's voice came over the comms. "Bridge to Olivia, how does she feel?" Olivia smiled faintly, "Like she's been waiting for us." The moment didn't go unnoticed by the alien observers stationed on nearby ships. Their commanders sent reports back to the Galactic Council. Some were uneasy, others awed. The Black Armada's heart was beating again, and it was beating under human command that night. As the Nightfall drifted beside the Ravenfall, her engines glowing faintly in the darkness, Daniel stood at the viewing window. He knew this was only the beginning. The rest of the Armada was still asleep, and time was running out. The Craven Swarm wouldn't wait. They would come, and when they did, humanity had to be ready. And now, with the Nightfall awake, Daniel was certain of one thing. The galaxy had just felt the first shiver of something they thought was gone forever. Far beyond the dead moon where the Nightfall floated, trouble was already coming. The Craven Swarm was on the move. They did not send warnings. They did not send demands. They simply arrived, devoured, and moved on. Their fleets were unlike any other. Jagged living ships grown from twisted alien biology. Each vessel pulsed like a beating heart, its black carapace glistening in the light of distant suns. The first reports reached the USS Ravenfall just as Daniel Ward was reviewing the Nightfalls. "Status," a transmission crackled over the comms from a border outpost. The voice was urgent and broken by static. "This is Station Garrison 3, Craven forces sighted," repeating. Heavy swarm signatures detected on long-range scan, requesting immediate support. Then there was a sharp burst of noise, and the signal died. Daniel turned to Olivia Brooks, who was already studying the tactical map. Red markers bloomed across the display like spreading fire. "They're moving faster than we expected," she said. "If they keep this speed, they'll reach the central colonies in less than 2 weeks." Daniel's jaw tightened. 2 weeks isn't enough time to bring the entire Armada online. On the bridge, the crew worked quickly. Engineers sent fresh status updates from the Nightfall, showing that she was now fully operational. But the other ships were still cold. It would take days, maybe weeks, to wake them all. Daniel knew. They couldn't wait for the perfect moment. Send word to the council. Daniel ordered. "Tell them the swarm is closing in. We're moving to intercept at the first engagement point." Olivia frowned. "With just one of the armadas. Ships ready?" Daniel gave her a steady look. "One is all we have, and it's one more than they're expecting." Meanwhile, in the black void between stars, the Craven fleet tore through a defenseless mining colony. The creatures that served as their boarding soldiers were long-limbed horrors. All claws and teeth, they moved through the mining tunnels like a tide of living shadows. The few defense drones the miners had were ripped apart in seconds. The Craven did not take prisoners. They left nothing alive. Word of the massacre spread fast. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings, but most of their fleets were scattered or engaged elsewhere. Only a handful of ships could be diverted to slow the swarm, and even those were too few to matter. Daniel didn't waste time on political delays. The Ravenfall and the Nightfall moved together, their drives burning bright against the darkness. As they accelerated, smaller escort craft fell into formation. 2 human destroyers and 1 alien frigate, crewed by volunteers who refused to sit and wait for their worlds to burn. On the Nightfall, Olivia stood on the newly reactivated bridge. The hum of power around her, the ship's systems responded almost instantly to human commands. Her gunnery officers ran targeting drills, cycling the massive rail cannons and plasma batteries. The engineers reported that the ship's shielding system was stronger than anything in the current fleet. Still, she knew they were going to war. Outnumbered, the Craven fleet they were heading toward was at least twice their size, and that didn't count the hundreds of boarding creatures each ship carried. Olivia kept her thoughts to herself. There was no point in telling the crew how dangerous it was. They already knew. As the ships closed the distance, long-range sensors picked up the Craven fleet. Their vessels swam through the void like a school of predators, shifting in strange, unnatural patterns. The largest among them, a command beast the size of a battleship, let out a low-frequency roar that made the Nightfall's sensors flare. It was not a sound meant to be heard. It was a weapon meant to shake the courage of anyone listening. "They know we're coming," Olivia said quietly. Daniel's voice came over the channel from the Ravenfall, calm as ever. "That let them know we're not running." The hours that followed were filled with tense preparation. Crews strapped into their stations, weapons charged, and shields warmed to full strength. The Nightfall's engines pulsed steadily, the glow from her reactor casting faint light. Through the maintenance corridors, in the mess hall, some crew sat quietly, eating their last meal before battle. Others checked their sidearms in silence. When the Craven fleet finally came into visual range, it was like watching a nightmare cross the stars. Their ships twisted and shifted as if they were alive, their surfaces crawling with movement. Olivia felt her pulse quicken, but forced her voice to stay steady as she gave the order. "Battle! Stations, all hands prepare for combat." The first exchange came quickly. Craven bioweapons streaked across the void, glowing like burning comets. The Nightfall's point defense guns tracked and destroyed most before they could hit, but a few slammed into the shields, sending ripples of light across the hull. In response, the Nightfall unleashed her main battery, a beam of pure energy so bright it burned afterimages into the eyes of anyone watching. It cut clean through the nearest Craven ship, splitting it apart in a burst of fire and organic debris. Daniel's voice came through the comms, sharp and precise, directing the smaller human and alien ships to flank the swarm. They moved in tight formations, forcing the Craven to split their attack. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. Far away, in the council chambers, alien admirals watched the live feed in stunned silence. For the first time in decades, the Black Armada was in battle again, and this time, it was humanity. At the helm, the battle began like a storm in the dark. The Nightfall's guns thundered, each shot sending tremors through her decks. Outside, the void was alive with fire, plasma bolts, and exploding Craven vessels. The swarm came in waves, their ships moving with unnatural coordination, weaving and twisting to avoid incoming fire. But the Nightfall was no ordinary warship. She had been built to kill fleets. On the bridge, Olivia Brooks stood at the tactical console, her eyes fixed on the sensor display. "Target their flank, Sector 7, she ordered. Her gunners responded instantly. The main rail cannon roared, firing a slug so massive it tore straight through 2 Craven ships in a single shot. A cheer went up from the crew, but Olivia kept her tone firm. "No celebrating yet, we're not done." Daniel Ward, aboard the Ravenfall, coordinated the smaller escort ships. His voice came over the comms. "Calm but sharp. Destroyers, draw their forward guns. Keep them focused on you while the nightfall hits from the side." The escorts obeyed without hesitation, darting between enemy fire, their smaller profiles making them harder targets. The Craven retaliated with frightening speed. One of the human destroyers took a direct hit from a bioplasma lance, its shields shattering in a burst of blue light. The ship spun out of formation, its hull burning. Daniel's jaw tightened as he gave the order to cover their retreat. A pair of alien fighters moved in, spraying the attackers with rapid-fire plasma to buy the crippled destroyer time. Meanwhile, the Nightfall surged forward, her engines blazing. Olivia knew they had to break the swarm's momentum before they were surrounded. "Bring the forward batteries online, all power to the main beam," she ordered. The ship's power levels spiked, and the main gun charged. The shot it unleashed was blinding. A lance of pure destruction that ripped through the enemy's largest command beast. The monstrous ship cracked apart, its organic hull splitting open like shattered bone. But victory came at a cost. Smaller Craven ships swarmed the Nightfall, firing spines that embedded into her hull. A warning light flashed on Olivia's console. Boarding pods detected. She slammed her fist down on the comm panel. "All hands, repel boarders, security teams to decks 6 through 9. In the corridors of the Nightfall, the fight turned brutal. Craven warriors burst from their pods, their claws tearing through steel panels. Human Marines met them in close combat, rifles spitting bursts of fire. Grenades exploded in confined spaces, filling the air with smoke and the sharp tang of scorched metal. The Marines fought in tight formations, using the corridors to choke the Craven advance. Olivia's voice rang through the comms, directing security squads and shifting bulkhead doors to trap enemies. In one section of the ship, a group of Craven warriors found themselves sealed inside an airlock. Seconds later, they were blasted into the void, their bodies spinning away into the darkness. Back in space, the Ravenfall was taking heavy fire. Daniel's voice was still steady, but there was strain beneath it. "Nightfall, I need that right flank cleared now." Olivia's hands flew over the controls, rerouting power to weapons. "Copy that, Captain." Opening a lane, the Nightfalls side batteries unleashed a storm of fire, tearing through the flank and giving the Ravenfall the breathing room it needed. The battle dragged on, minutes feeling like hours. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The swarm's formations were breaking apart, their ships scattering under the relentless assault. The Nightfall and her escorts pressed forward, striking at the heart of the enemy. One by one, the Craven vessels went dark, drifting lifeless in the void. Then came the final blow. Olivia ordered the Nightfall to unleash a full barrage, every gun, every missile, every weapon firing at once. The result was a wall of fire and light that engulfed the remaining Craven ships. When the glare faded, there was nothing left but debris. The battlefield fell silent. On the Ravenfall, Daniel allowed himself a small breath of relief. "All ships, status report," he called, one by one. Voices came in damaged but alive. The crippled destroyer was being towed. The alien frigate had lost part of its hull, but was still spaceworthy. The Nightfall herself bore deep scars across her armor, but her systems were stable. In the aftermath, recovery crews moved in, scanning for survivors among the wreckage. There were none on the Craven side. Their ships were dead. Their threat, at least for now, ended. But everyone on the bridge knew this was only the first battle. As the Nightfall drifted in the quiet that followed, her hull glowing faintly in the light of a distant star, Olivia looked out through the viewport. She could feel it in her bones. The legend was real. The Black Armada still had its strength, and now the galaxy had seen it with their own eyes. On the Council worlds, news of the victory spread like wildfire. Footage of the nightfall tearing through the swarm played on every channel. The same alien leaders who had doubted humanity now watched with a mix of awe and fear. They had not just reawakened an old warship. They had reawakened a fleet that could change the war. Daniel stood on the Ravenfall's bridge, gazing at the dark shape of the nightfall against the stars. His voice was quiet, meant only for himself. One ship down. Now let's wake the rest. The victory against the Craven swarm sent shockwaves through the galaxy. On worlds far from the battle, people stopped to watch shaky hollow footage of the nightfall slicing through enemy ships like a blade through paper. Some couldn't believe it was real. Others whispered that the Black Armada had truly returned. But for Daniel Ward and Olivia Brooks, there was no time to celebrate. The war was far from over, and one ship, no matter how powerful, was not enough. The nightfall was brought back to the dead moon where the rest of the Armada still slept. She floated like a guardian above her silent sisters, her scarred black hull a reminder of the battle she had just survived. Below her, the massive shapes of other warships rested in darkness, each one a potential weapon against the swarm. Daniel stood on the Ravenfall's observation deck, studying the holographic display of the Armada. "We start with the Shadow Wing and the Obsidian Spear," he said to Olivia. "They're closest to operational, and their systems are similar to the Nightfalls. If we work fast, we can have them online within a week." Olivia gave a short nod. "And after that, we go for the big ones. Teams of engineers, both human and alien, descended on the dormant ships. The process was faster this time. They had learned from waking the nightfall, and now they moved with precision. Boarding crews moved through dusty corridors, reactivating life support, checking for structural weaknesses, and feeding power into silent reactors. The Shadow Wing was the first to stir. Her hull was sleek and curved, designed for speed and precision strikes. When her engines flared for the first time in 50 years, the crew cheered. Olivia stood on her bridge, running her hands over the control panels as if greeting an old friend. "She's fast," she said into the comms, "and she's ready to bite." Next came the Obsidian Spear, a heavy assault ship bristling with weapons. Her armor was thicker than the Nightfall's, and her main gun was a monster that could fire projectiles the size of small shuttles. Evan Cole, leading the engineering crew, laughed over the comms when the reactor came online. "She's a fighter, Captain. I'd hate to be on the wrong end of her." As each ship came alive, the fleet around the dead moon grew. The Nightfall Shadow Wing and Obsidian Spear formed the first wave of the reborn Armada, but more ships waited. Their names whispered in excitement among the crews: the Iron Fang, the Black Halo, the Spectre's Veil. Each one had a history. Each one had scars from battles long past. But with every new awakening came more attention. The Galactic Council began sending observers. Some were there to help, others to watch closely and make sure humanity wasn't building an unstoppable force they couldn't control. Daniel knew they didn't trust him completely, but he didn't care. As long as the Armada kept growing, they could win. The work was not without danger. On the third day of reactivation, an unstable reactor on the Black Halo nearly went critical, forcing evacuation of the engineering team. It took hours of delicate adjustments to stabilize it. During that time, Olivia personally suited up and entered the reactor chamber with Cole, helping to replace the ancient coolant valves. Sweat dripped inside her helmet as she worked, knowing one mistake could turn the entire ship into a fireball. When the final valve locked in place and the hum of the reactor steadied, she let out a slow breath. "That's one less thing trying to kill us," she said. As the days passed, the docks around the moon were filled with constant movement supply ships delivering parts, fuel freighters pumping plasma into the awakened ships, training drills running day and night. The new crews had to learn fast. Many of them had never served on vessels this massive or this old. The controls were different, the systems more temperamental. But under human leadership, the teams adapted quickly one evening. Daniel stood on the Nightfall's bridge, looking out at the fleet. The Shadow Wing and Obsidian Spear glided past, their hull lights glowing in the dark. Beyond them, the newly awakened Iron Fang tested her weapons, firing practice shots into the empty void. The sight was almost surreal, the Black Armada silent. For decades, now slowly filling the sky again, Olivia joined him. Holding a datapad with fresh reports. "We'll have 6 ships ready within 2 weeks," she said. "If the Craven don't come sooner." Daniel's eyes didn't leave the window. "They'll come. The question is whether we'll be ready." Enough when they do. That night, a message came through from the outer colonies. Another swarm fleet had been spotted. Larger than the one they had just fought. It was moving steadily toward the Central Territories, eating up worlds in its path. The Council wanted the Armada ready for deployment within days, not weeks. Daniel called an emergency meeting of all. Ship captains, human and alien. The room was tense, the air thick with the weight of what they were about to face. "We don't have time to bring the whole fleet online," Daniel said, "so we'll go with what we've got. Nightfall, Shadow Wing, Obsidian Spear, and Iron Fang will lead. The rest will follow as soon as they're operational." There were no objections. Every captain in the room knew what was at stake. The swarm wouldn't stop unless they were forced. 2, and the Armada was the only thing strong enough to do it. When the meeting ended, Daniel returned to the Nightfall. Her decks were alive with activity. Crew members running drills, engineers checking the reactor, gunners practicing target locks. Outside, the black ships of the Armada floated in formation. Silent but ready, in the cold void beyond, the enemy was coming. And the galaxy was about to see what happened when the Black Armada truly came alive. The warning came in the middle of the night cycle. The Craven swarm had arrived at the edge of the Draven Rift, a region of space filled with violent plasma storms and unstable asteroid fields. It was a dangerous place for any fleet to fight. But the swarm didn't care. They were moving straight through it toward the central colonies, tearing apart anything in their way. On the Nightfall's bridge, alarms echoed as tactical displays lit up with red markers. Olivia Brooks stared at the map, her voice tense. "They've brought everything they have. This is their main force." The enemy formation was massive, hundreds of living ships pulsing with sickly light. The largest of them dwarfed even the Nightfall, its twisted shape bristling with bioweapons. Daniel Ward stood at the center of the bridge, calm but sharp-eyed. "All ships, form up. We'll hit them at the rift." The rest of the partially awakened Armada fell into position. The Shadow Wing, Obsidian Spear, and Iron Fang, along with the smaller escorts. The rest of the Black Armada was still coming online, but these 4 would have to hold the line alone as they approached the Draven Rift. The void outside became turbulent. Rivers of glowing plasma streaked past like lightning frozen in space. Massive asteroids tumbled through the storms, colliding in bursts of debris. Olivia's fingers flew over the controls, plotting a course that would keep them hidden in the rift's chaos until the right moment. The first Craven scouts entered the rift, searching for prey. The Shadow Wing struck first, darting out from behind a plasma cloud and tearing the scouts apart with precise cannon fire. The moment the enemy realized the Armada was here, the battle began in full. Craven ships surged forward, their weapons glowing. The Nightfall unleashed her main beam, cutting a burning line through the swarm. 2 enemy cruisers split apart in the blast, drifting lifeless into the rift's storms. The Obsidian Spear followed with a barrage of heavy slugs, each impact shattering enemy hulls into twisted shards. But the Craven were relentless. They adapted to the human tactics quickly, swarming the Iron Fang in waves. Olivia's voice rang through the comms. "Shadow Wing, cover Iron Fang's flank." Nightfall moving to intercept. The sleek strike ship broke off its attack run and swept in low, shredding the attackers before they could pierce the Iron Fang's shields. Then the rift itself turned against them. A massive plasma surge erupted from the storm, lighting the battlefield in white fire. Several ships, human and Craven alike, were caught in the blast, their systems overloaded. The Nightfall's shields flared, holding under the strain but draining precious power on the Nightfall's lower decks. The situation became critical. Power fluctuations shut down parts of the ship, and a fire broke out in the secondary engineering bay. Crew scrambled to contain it, fighting both the flames and the shuddering of the ship as enemy fire rained down. Daniel's voice came through the comms, steady despite the chaos. "Hold formation. Don't let them break through." His orders kept the fleet together even as the rift tried to scatter them. The Armada moved as one, shifting through asteroid fields, using the debris as cover, and striking back with ruthless precision. The enemy command beast finally entered the fight. Its enormous maw glowed with bioenergy before unleashing a beam that carved through an asteroid the size of a city, sending molten fragments flying. One fragment slammed into the shadow wing, tearing a deep gash along her side. Olivia's voice was sharp. "Get her out of the line before she breaks apart." The Nightfall turned her weapons on the command beast, pouring fire into its shields. The obsidian spear joined in, its heavy slugs punching through the creature's armor. The monster roared in the strange low frequency the Craven used, shaking the very decks of the Armada's ships. For hours the battle raged in the chaos of the rift. Ships darted between asteroid shadows, weapons lit up the darkness, and plasma storms painted everything in shifting light. Slowly, the swarm began to falter. Their formations broke apart, their command beast weakening under the combined assault. Olivia seized the moment. Nightfall, full power to main gun, target the command beast. The Nightfall's reactor roared, channeling everything into one devastating shot. The beam lanced through the void, striking the monster dead center. The creature shuddered, its bio-light flickering, before it split apart in a blinding explosion, with their leader destroyed. The remaining Craven ships scattered, some fled into the rifts. Storms, others were hunted down by the Iron Fang and the recovering Shadow Wing. The Armada pressed the attack until the last enemy signal vanished from the sensors. When the silence returned, the plasma storm seemed almost calm. The surviving ships of the Armada regrouped. Battered but alive, the rift was littered with debris, both organic and metal, drifting slowly in the glowing storms. On the Nightfall's bridge, Daniel looked at the display of surviving ships. His voice was quiet but firm. "We held them here, and now they know the Black Armada is back." Olivia allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "And we're just getting started." Far away, on worlds watching the battle through live feeds, the image of the Black Armada striking in the heart of the rift spread like wildfire. It was no longer just a story of survival, it was the return of a fleet that could turn the war, and in the hearts of billions, hope began to burn again. The battle in the Draven Rift had ended, but its echoes traveled far beyond the plasma storms, across the galaxy. News feeds replayed the moment the Nightfall's beam split the Craven command beast in two. People who had lived in fear for years stood in crowded streets, watching the footage again and again. The Black Armada was no longer a legend, it was alive, and it was fighting for the galaxy once more. On the Nightfall's bridge, the crew was exhausted. Faces were smeared with grease and sweat, uniforms torn from the long hours of combat. Yet there was a quiet pride in every glance they exchanged. They had faced the largest Craven fleet yet, and had not broken. The Shadow Wing limped beside them, her hull still scorched from the rift's plasma surges. The Iron Fang and Obsidian Spear showed deep battle scars, but their reactors still burned strong. Daniel Ward stood by the main viewport, looking at the drifting wreckage that filled the rift. The silence after the battle was almost unsettling. He knew this wasn't the end of the war. The Craven would regroup, and they would come again. But for now, they had won, and that meant the galaxy had a chance. Olivia Brooks joined him, holding a datapad with the latest reports. 6 more ships have been brought online during the battle, she said. The Black Halo Inspector's Veil are ready for deployment. The rest will be combat ready within the week. Daniel's eyes didn't leave the view. Then we'll need to use this time. The Craven won't give us much. The Armada returned to the dead moon, now transformed into a bustling fortress. Supply ships swarmed around the docks, hauling fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts. Crews worked day and night, repairing the scars of the Rift battle. In the hangars, Marines trained with alien soldiers, learning each other's tactics. Voices in dozens of languages filled the air, united by one goal: keep the Armada ready while repairs continued. Daniel was summoned to the Galactic Council chamber. The same half-circle of alien admirals who had once doubted him now rose to greet him. Some were still cautious, but the tone had changed. The insectoid admiral with shimmering wings spoke first. "The galaxy owes you a debt, Captain Ward. Without the Armada, the Rift would have fallen." Another admiral, the bronze-scaled reptilian, leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "But you must understand, Captain, the Armada has not been used in living memory for a reason. You have proven its power, but can you control it?" Daniel met his gaze without hesitation. "I don't control the Armada alone. We do, humans, aliens, anyone willing to fight for the survival of our worlds. These ships are weapons, yes, but weapons are only dangerous in the hands of those who misuse them. I have no intention of turning them against the Council." The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then the pale-skinned counselor who had once questioned him nodded slowly. "Then perhaps you are the right one to lead them for now." Daniel left the meeting knowing the Council still didn't fully trust him. But trust was something that could be built over time right now. He had something more important: permission to deploy the full Armada as he saw fit when he returned to the moon's docks. The sight took his breath away. The Nightfall floated at the center of the formation, her black hull gleaming under the light of nearby stars. Around her, the Shadow Wing, Obsidian Spear, Iron Fang, and newly awakened Black Halo Inspector's Veil took their positions. Behind them, more ships were coming online, one by one, until the entire shadow of the Armada loomed over the dead moon. That night, Daniel walked through the Nightfall's corridors. The hum of her reactors was steady, her lights warm. The crew moved with purpose, no longer hesitant around the ancient systems. He stopped on the observation deck, where young crew members were looking out at the fleet. One of them, a new recruit named Harris, turned to him. "Sir, it's like they were waiting for us, like they knew humans would be the ones to wake them." Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe they were. The next morning, orders came in from the Council. Craven movements had been detected in 3 different sectors. Daniel didn't hesitate. He called Olivia to the bridge. "Time to show the galaxy what the Armada can really do." The fleet began to move, engines flaring as the ships turned toward the void. Their formation was tight, precise, like the steps of a war dance. The Nightfall led, her lights glowing faintly against the darkness. Each ship carried crews who had fought and bled together, who now trusted one another with their lives. As they left the moon behind, a final message was sent out across the galaxy. It was simple, carried on every open channel in human and alien space alike. "The Black Armada has returned. Humanity stands with you. The war is not over, but together we will win." In distant homes, in hidden resistance outposts, in cities still recovering from Craven attacks, people heard the words and believed them. For the first time in years, there was a sense that the tide could turn. And as the Armada disappeared into the stars, Daniel Ward knew this was just the beginning. The Craven thought they understood war, but they had never fought against the full power of the Black Armada under human command. Soon they would, and when that day came, the galaxy would remember.